In this video, you will learn why mortgages are actually good for you, 3 most important factors impacting the outcome of your mortgage, and how to reduce how long it takes. No matter where you are in the process today, you could be thinking about taking on your first mortgage or already be paying it. So why should you listen to me? I bought with my partner after renting privately for a number of years, and since taking out our mortgage in 2020, we've taken off £70,000 from our mortgage and reduced our monthly minimum payments to just £340 a month. We're well on track to have this mortgage cleared decades early, and we live in the south of England, so it isn't cheap, and it's not just that we live in the middle of nowhere or have ridiculously high incomes. We found it just takes a basic understanding to manipulate the mortgage to your advantage. I very rarely look into the origin of words, but in this case I do think it's useful to explain what a mortgage is. So the word actually comes from an old French word meaning dead pledge. The pledge, or in this case loan, would be over or dead in one of 2 scenarios. Scenario A, the buyer fails to meet the terms and unfortunately loses their property. And scenario B, the buyer pays it all off and the agreement ends. This second scenario is obviously the most common, but today I want us all to take it a step further and aim not to have this loan hanging over our heads for 25, 30 or even 40 years, but rather to have this paid off within the medium term of say 10 to 15 years, so that we can be working towards having a guaranteed roof over our heads without it taking the majority of our adult lives. And according to the latest government data, the cost of housing is now around 60% of the typical family budget. Therefore, to remove this obligation would be huge, especially since it's probably the single biggest expense that you've got. So with that very worthy goal laid out, let's now talk about why a mortgage can actually be good for you. So I've divided this into 2 different categories: soft facts or emotion-driven reasons, followed by hard facts where the numbers come in. So firstly, owning brings autonomy and freedom. Also, buying brings you peace of mind. There isn't anything quite like the feeling of having your own home, and you also know that you're not going to be turfed out if the owner decides to sell. And thirdly, it helps you save. So if you have a repayment mortgage, you're not just paying interest, you're also obviously paying back that loan, which means that over time you're able to save up, which also leads me nicely into point number 4, which is that it builds assets through equity. Now, equity is just the portion of your home's value that you own outright, and it's also really important because it's an asset rather than a liability. Like loads of people that are struggling with their finances, all of their money goes towards liabilities or things that are kind of just used up and spent and go down in value, never up. Whereas a home, given that the value of houses goes up over time, is very much an asset, and it can be helpful to your net worth over the long run. And fifth and finally, I want to mention that it can reduce your expenses, both overall and over time. So obviously the more progress that you make on your mortgage, the less your minimum monthly obligation is going to be, because you owe less and less, and therefore your payments get smaller. And so it can really help as you make progression throughout this journey of becoming mortgage free. You're benefiting from that lower monthly cost. Now, in order to understand how this works, you need to know the 3 most important factors that impact your mortgage and why. You can use the acronym L.I.T to remember these, and if you're enjoying the video so far, comment L.I.T down below, I'd appreciate it. A top tip from me is to write each of these numbers down as we go through, so you can use them when it comes to the next part of the video, where we will actually break down exactly what you can do and the steps you can take to pay your mortgage off faster. Firstly, the loan, or in other words, the amount you owe or borrow on the mortgage to buy your property. This number is probably going to be the easiest to find, and if you haven't bought a property yet, then estimate the number by taking the value of the property that you are considering minus the deposit you plan to put down. So imagine buying a property for $250,000 with a 10% deposit. Your loan at the start is $250k minus $25k for the deposit equals $225,000. If you already have your mortgage, check your latest mortgage statement or contact your lender to see how much that you have left. Secondly, we have interest or interest rate, and that is how much the lender, that could be a bank or building society, is going to charge while the mortgage is ongoing, so while you're paying that back. Google current rates to find what's competitive if you are planning on buying, but be sure to note down the interest rate you are currently on if you already have a mortgage ongoing. Finally, the term or duration of the mortgage agreement, which is the total amount of time you have to finish paying everything back or time left. Typical terms remaining would be 25 to 30 years for a new mortgage, but write down what's left time-wise if you've already started. So far, we've discussed why a mortgage is good and the 3 most important aspects to the mortgage. But to round it all off and to get the results we're after, we need to actually work out what we need to do next. So here I'm going to walk you through it step by step using a calculator that is free to use online, and you can follow along to input your own numbers and see what's possible. Firstly, the simple one. This is the overpayment calculator. This lets you see how much you can reduce the time left on your mortgage by paying extra, and can be used by anyone, either pre-planning before you get the mortgage or after the mortgage has started. Go to the first link in the description of this video and enter in the following details: mortgage amount, interest rate, mortgage term. Now you can enter the amount extra that you can afford to pay on top of your existing mortgage payment. I will go with a typical example based on the average mortgage in the UK being around 200k over 30 years. A monthly overpayment of £100 will save 5 years and £37,000 in interest. However, it's not enough to make the kind of impact we want, so I increased it to £500, and now I can see how I can shave 15 years off my mortgage and save £100,000 in interest. It's the exact result we were going for, mortgage-free in 15 years, but play around with the overpayment amount to see what number works out best based on what you can afford and the results it shows. You should be aware that some mortgages restrict the amount you can overpay, so it's worth double checking the T's and C's on your mortgage to see, especially if you're planning to make big overpayments, and especially if it's more than 10% of the total loan paid within 1 year. The next calculator I want to show you is the interest rate change calculator. This is something I came across for the first time recently, and it's really cool because it lets you see how changing your interest rate will influence your payments, for better or for worse, I suppose. This time I'm going in and taking the exact same situation with the mortgage we had before and see what happens if I decrease the interest rate by just 1%. That leads to a saving of £119 in interest every month, which, if we put into an overpayment, is already enough to shave 6 years off my mortgage. Obviously, you don't always have the option to reduce the interest rate, as you have to go with rates that are available and at a time when you're not currently locked in. But for those who have got an interest rate above 4% currently, it may be worth checking if you are able to lock in a new rate. For example, you could have been paying 6.5% with the option to switch either immediately or within the next few months. The difference a minus 2.5% change makes is over £309 a month. This means that based on the examples in the video, you could put that savings straight into an overpayment and only have to top it up by a further £191 to get the results shown here. I hope you've enjoyed this video and took something useful from it. Let me know in the comments what you want me to discuss in future videos, and hopefully we'll see each other in the next one. Bye.